Hello everybody, my name is Average Election Enjoyer. Today on June 11th of 2026, I just want to start this video by saying I have been extremely busy over these last 2 weeks. However, after today I had my last final, so the scheduling of videos is going to return to a more normal pace of a couple videos a week, other than the one video a week that I was trying to put out for the past couple weeks here. So you should be seeing a more consistent stream of videos being uploaded over the next coming months. And especially as we are leading up to the November midterms here. The first thing I want to go over is for the California governorship, where it has been confirmed that Steve Hilton will be advancing to the second round. So the second round will be Xavier Becerra versus Steve Hilton here. Tom Steyer, he did make a comeback. He was able to flip several of these Northern California counties in the end, but it did not end up being enough, and he would be defeated. As you can see, there's a lot more blue on this map than there was in some of these than it was previously, I should say. Even Riverside flipped to Becerra after the final votes are nearly tabulated here. As more votes are coming in, Riverside's going to continue to get bluer as well. And Democrats are going to end up with a solid chunk of the vote here. If we count up the top two, basically all the Republicans who got a substantial amount of vote, they end up being under 40%. They're about 37%, I believe, of the total vote, maybe less than that. Yeah, this is 35, 35% here, and then if you add up all the other Republicans down ballot, Republicans probably got to about 36% of the vote overall. So this is a fairly good performance on the Democrats. They overperformed in this primary compared to what they normally do. So congratulations to Becerra and Hilton for advancing. And of course, Becerra is going to be the heavy favorite in that election here. Moving on, we can look at Maine, where you see Susan Collins, of course, incumbent, uncontested primary here, and Graham Plattner gaining nearly 72% of the vote, despite the recent scandals that broke about him in regards to potential infidelity and all sorts of stuff, Reddit posts, all sorts of that good stuff. It did not matter. Graham Plattner dominated the primary. Janet Mills, who dropped out already, gaining only 19% of the vote. Dominant performance from Graham Plattner. And if you are a Democrat in Maine, that is a good sign, because despite the scandals, they are continuing to push forward Graham Plattner here. And are continuing to be behind their preferred candidate. And he does carry a message that I believe is going to be helpful against Susan Collins. He carries a strong progressive message that I think will work well in a state like Maine, a +8 Democratic state, New England state, especially like Maine. Even against a more moderate known winner like Susan Collins, I would say Graham Plattner is mildly favored in this election here. So congrats to Plattner and Collins on their wins. For the South Carolina Senate, we see that Lindsey Graham, once again the incumbent, wins his election. Of course, this was not a great performance compared to other Trump-endorsed Republican candidates here. Lindsey Graham only gaining 56.8% of the vote overall, and losing several counties in northwest South Carolina here, and also having poor performances, not even gaining, only having pluralities in some of these other counties here. His base was more, of course, in south East and South Carolina here. This area was his base, but he did in fact struggle up here. in the more northern and more western parts of South Carolina. However, he is, of course, going to be the favorite. I'm sure you guys saw stuff about how Democrats were turning out at huge margins in this election, especially in the early vote. However, that is mostly because of backlash to the Calais decision. Um, don't expect any this race to be super close. Annie Andrews versus Lindsey Graham, don't expect that to be particularly close. And of course, Annie Andrews gaining 61.5% of the vote, defeating her two opposing candidates. Um, Republicans gaining quite a bit more turnout, of course, as you can see. Not as bad as it has been in the past, however. And it was a pretty dominant performance from Annie Andrews. She won pretty much every county in the state, and every county she lost, well, not every county, but they were mostly pretty close. So a pretty dominant performance from her over her opponents. So congrats to Andrews and Graham for uh, uh, their success in moving on to the next round here. Of course, next one is Nevada, and this is going to be the final one I'm breaking down because I don't think that the Dakota races are particularly interesting, nor any of the other elections that happened there. We could see a lot of these districts are in. Not too close. This is the closest election for the Democrats, and for Republicans, there was some closer elections here. But the main one to look at is going to be in the gubernatorial election, where of course we see Joe Lombardo dominating his primary, winning every single county. He is the incumbent governor, and he is currently the favorite in this election. He is not favored by a huge amount, though. It's interesting. But he is the favorite in this election, even in a state like Nevada. Um, and of course, on the Democratic side, we see Aaron Ford win for the Democrats, gaining 63.7% of the vote, winning almost every county. A fairly dominant performance, other than the fact that he tied with none of these candidates in Esmeralda County. But this appears to be a small, more rural county here, where Republicans gain a significantly amount more votes versus the more uh, Democratic counties here. There we go. That's a big margin for the Democrats. A lot of votes coming out of Clark County. Um, votes for both parties, of course. It's probably one of the more populated counties in the state. So dominant performances from both of these candidates. This is a still winnable election for the Democrats. Of course, Joe Lombardo, pretty strong incumbent there. That would be kind of a task to unseat. But if the Trump administration continues to decline in popularity, you see from the with the war, gas prices, economy, all that sort of stuff, if that keeps on, if his popularity keeps on declining, this is one of the races that is going to be the tell just how big this blue tsunami could potentially be here. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.